this kind of level of deadlift, so I have to say thank you so much. Like, I'm so glad that we are even able to take this on, and it's a very humbling experience for me. So I appreciate you guys coming in and seeing what we got to say. All right, so yeah, I got to take our hands together and clap. So first and foremost, guys, we got two things that we're going to go over with. This is generally a pulling-based seminar here. So the first one is going to be deadlift. We're going to spend some time talking about deadlift, seeing like basic form checks, things that we might be able to improve on, things that you can think about in your head while you're doing the exercise to make you more confident, make you feel better in the lift itself. And then I'm going to go over some like common errors, whatnot, quick fixes that we can do to start making things move a little bit quicker. All right. Second one we're going to work on is going to be pull-ups. As far as pull-ups go, there's a little bit less to say for that one. They don't get as kind of mechanical as a deadlift will. However, there's still a lot that we can think about and kind of work towards, and then I have some stuff that you might be able to do more so on your own time. So if you want to work on pull-ups at home to become better at them in here, I'm going to give you tips and tricks on how to do that so that we can just kind of apply this stuff and move forward. All right. So first and foremost, let's talk about the deadlift. Me and the deadlift go way back. All right, guys. So I have a lot to say about deadlift. So what is the deadlift anyways? I would say it's primarily a leg exercise that also targets our back, our grip quite a bit, but then also a bunch of other muscles. All right. What is the deadlift not? All right. It is not a lift that is necessarily reserved for like powerlifting. It's not something that's reserved for people that are experienced in lifting. It is not anything like that. It's something that anyone and everyone can do, and everybody should reap the benefits that the deadlift provides. So it is a total body strength movement where it really specifically works our legs, our trunk muscles, and some other things, including grip and upper back, all that good stuff. All right. So, in terms of some myths that surround the deadlift, it can be a little bit of a scary one for a lot of people when they're first starting out in the gym. So I'm going to kind of try to go over some of those. Are there any that any of you guys have heard before? Anything surrounding the deadlift that may not be the most positive information you've ever heard? Nothing?
Hurting your back.
That is a common one, yes. So I hear that one all the time. Probably since I started lifting, I've heard that deadlifts can hurt your back, or they're bad for your back. I'm here to say I disagree with that stance pretty fully. When I was younger and I first started getting into lifting, I didn't really know exactly what I was doing, and I bulged my L4, L5 discs in my lower back. Chiropractics, all that stuff, never really did any work for me the way that I needed it to, and so that was the first time in my life where I was like, okay, I should probably take this seriously if I'm actually planning on getting any good at lifting. And so that basically made me take my form to the next level and really focus on doing it right. All right, and I would say if you were doing things correctly, the deadlift is probably one of the few exercises that I could ever use to increase the strength of my back tenfold. And since that time of injuring myself to now, I'm like the strongest I've ever been in this specific exercise. Of course, I deal with some lingering stuff every now and again. Like, I mean, if I sit and drive in my car for a long time, like, stuff hurts for a while. But deadlifting has made me a lot stronger in that. So I would say that is number one. And then there's also, I hear that it's not for necessarily beginners. Or people think that it's reserved for like athletes or powerlifters or something. And I'm also here to say that's just not true. There's no prerequisite strength that you need to be able to do this. And it can be modified to fit anybody at any point in time. Alright? So, let's go over the 5 big things that we need to think about when we're deadlifting, guys. Alright? First one is going to be our foot position. So we stand right up under the bar. Alright? We always want to set up to the bar. We don't want the bar to set up to us. So what I mean by that is this bar should basically never move until I'm physically pulling it off the ground. Alright? So if I'm sitting here, and I'm like, all right, I mean, get this deadlift in, get down, touch the bar, I'm moving it all around. This is not what I want to do, all right? The bar should be nice and still, and I approach the barbell exactly as it is. The preferred grip position for this is going to be hands right outside of our feet, or about shoulder width, all right? So therefore, our preferred feet is going to be slightly inside, all right? So from there, step number 3, we're going to bring her down. We're going to reach for our hands here, we're going to grab just outside, and we're going to bend our knees so our shins touch the bar, alright? The 4th thing we want to do is we want to bring up our chest, alright? So what that does is it creates a lot of tension through my back. So you guys can see this from the side here. This is the flat back position that is generally talked about in a deadlift. So once we get close, hands down, shins come to the bar, and I pull up on my back. All right, so what that does is it just creates a bunch of tension. It's not necessarily like a flat back, and everybody is going to look different when doing this. All right, but what it does do is it creates as much tension in our upper body as we can get, so then we can just drag the bar up our body. Okay, the dragging is probably the most important part of the whole thing, because we want the bar to stay as close to us as we can. All right, the closer the bar is to our hips, the easier this is going to feel. Everybody knows if you kick something out that's really far away from you before, it gets really heavy really fast. All right, so the closest this is to where we're working from, which will be here, is going to be right up our shins, past those knees, and then bring our hips to the bar. There's basically no air between me and the bar at all. All right, taking my time to lay down.
Mitch, are you engaging your or when you do the lift, are you just purely engaging your legs then?
No. So I'm kind of thinking about my whole body. So we can break these down a little bit more. So in specifically like my chest and my tension. So something that I like to think about when I'm pulling the bar before it even comes off the floor is I like to think about getting heavy in my hands first. Okay, so like, you know, when you jiggle the bar and you kind of hear there's some slap in it per se. Like it's not like a taut bar as it is when it's like up here and I move it, it doesn't make much noise because now there's like weight on the bar basically. But when I get down here and I grab it and I pull, so what's happening is I'm kind of pulling with my hands first. So what that does is it kind of creates a lot of force through my shoulder and my back as I tuck my elbows and pull my shoulder blades up back, bring my chest up, and then it's going to flex my lower back. And so my upper back is super tight. This is like not a comfortable position to hold. After a while, like I would have to take a break or just use my legs to kind of shove through. But what that does is it kind of stops us from pulling the bar twice. So like if I just get up here and I pull it, and I get pulled again when I go to pull the bar, you know what I mean? Whereas if I get down here and I kind of set myself up and I get a nice strong position, then I can just activate my legs and push through. So the goal would be to get like super, super tight before you lift your legs up so that when you come up, the only thing you have to think about is pushing your hips into the bar. Just kind of dragging yourself through the motion, essentially. So that's a really great question, but that's kind of one of the hardest things to get used to is the idea of getting into this position where your back is like super flat and everything's really tight, just because it's not like the most comfortable thing. It feels kind of weird. And there's some mistakes that kind of happen with that in terms of when people try to get into that position, what they'll do is they sit lower. And so what that does is it kind of brings your chest up more, and it feels good, but it's not necessarily a great starting position because once the weight gets heavy, what happens is you pull up and your hips just kind of shoot back anyways to make up for that because, well, we're not dealing with lightweight. You know, that's really all that it is. So from a physics standpoint, that's all this really comes down to is it's just like the heavier this weight becomes, like the more your body kind of has to sit in certain positions or it just won't move at all. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. Nice and tight through the hands so I can create as much tension in my upper body as I can and then shove my legs through. But ideally I'm using a little bit of everything, all right?
So I've been told that when I stuck in your stomach, is that supposed to help with pulling your back or does it not at all?
Sucking your stomach in terms of like pulling everything in? So I would say the opposite. Not to be like contrarian or anything, and I'm just gonna be like, no, I don't believe in anything. But it's more of like, so I wanna have as much air in here as I can get. So that kind of would bring into the breathing exercise behind deadlift. So when I'm thinking about my breath for this exercise, or really any big exercise where I would say my entire spine is working, so that's gonna primarily be like deadlift, squatting, and overhead pressing, where just like we have a lot of spine kind of load, you could say, like the weight is kind of basically all focused on what our back is doing. So in that, we want this area to be very rigid and we want it to be full of air. So we're trying to make as much pressure as we can. So I like to say like, maybe take a quiet inhale through your nose. And what that does is it draws everything in here. You can see the belly starts to push out a little bit. And that's fine. That's why sometimes this narrower stance can be a little bit uncomfortable because sometimes people get down here and they start to take that breath in and their stomach will push against their legs. Which is why, like I said, this is not necessarily like You have to do all of these things exactly as I'm saying. There's no like strict rules, there's just some fundamentals. So if you want to stand a little bit wider to stop that from happening, you can. But I wouldn't suck in. Instead what I would do is suck in all that air and I hold it, all right, especially when I'm down here. So I like to breathe kind of at the top before I go for a deadlift. Get tight, brace down, so I'm squeezing my ribs towards my hips, holding on all my air through here. Then I bring it up, and I exhale at the top. And then as I'm making my way back down, before I get super bent over, take a big breath in, right back up. But you want to hold as much air in here so that everything stays like very tight. Essentially what that'll do is it creates really just a lot of space and pressure in our midsection so that our abs can kind of help push against our back and everything can kind of work as like a little bubble. Almost like if you've ever seen like a soda can, you know, when it's like still closed and there's no break points, you could stand on a soda can. But as soon as you like open it up and you release that pressure, it's no longer stable. So like this same thing kind of happens here. So the more air we keep in there, and kind of like the more closed we can keep our throat in that moment so that we're not just like seeking out air. So if I'm like, you know, if I'm like pushing out all this air, like I'm gonna slowly fall further and further forward. Especially as that weight gets like more and more heavy, you know what I mean? So I'm gonna keep it all in there, not necessarily suck in, but kind of have a big stomach and just like brace down as hard as I can. Just get nice and tight through there. So that's a great question, huh? Does anyone else have any questions? Emily, what's up?
How do the belts and the straps help? Oh yeah.
So good one. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about the grip. So why would we ever use straps? Well, it's because your legs are just a whole lot stronger than our thumbs. So when we're working on deadlift, the first thing that most people experience, and I'm sure a lot of you have experienced in here, is it starts sliding out of your hands. All right, so, but that's because our legs are capable of pushing way more weight than our thumbs are capable of holding on to. I mean, you just do a comparison in size, right? So there's a lot more that we can do out of our leg than our thumb. So straps kind of help to secure that kind of thing. So as your grip kind of, and it's fine, that's a problem that everybody runs into. There's not like, I feel like as soon as like it slips out of someone's hand, they're like, oh, I need to work on my grip strength, and they start doing like forearms and like all this other stuff. I don't necessarily think that's true, but there's different positions we can use for grip, or you can use the straps. We actually have a pair of straps, so I was going to show you guys all how to use them. But straps will just help to secure, so instead of pulling from the thumb, it's going to pull from our wrist. All right, so that essentially ties and secures the weight to our wrist so that we no longer even have to worry about the thumb. And I would say, like, once you have that level of tightness and grip on the bar, your confidence just skyrockets, because sometimes if you're kind of holding on, you're like willy-nilly with your fingers and you're not getting a good hard grip on there, you'll notice it immediately when you pull that bar and you're not as strong. Like your grip is going to start to kind of change everything, and that's every lift. I usually recommend any lift you're doing, you should be grabbing that bar or whatever it is as hard as you can, because that just carries through on like a mental level. Like if you're doing something really hard, you're going to push hard for everything. So what we can do with straps is you can use those to secure your grip, or you can change your hand position. So something that a lot of people do is they'll incorporate a mixed grip, which would be our dominant hand down, all right? Non-dominant arm, hands up, all right? And we do it like so. So one is up, one is down, and then we'll do like that. All right, so we have an underhand and overhand. Only thing with this one is it kind of eliminates the problem, but it still does get hard to a point. And it's not necessarily very easy to do if you're not comfortable. So if you're planning on doing that one, I would recommend starting from the beginning of the lift and don't change to that when things start to get heavy. You know what I mean? Like start to work with that position so you get used to it as you warm up, and not just be like, all right, now this is getting heavy, so I'm going to change everything I've just been doing, because it's kind of like just throwing it for a loop. The next one would be what's called a hook grip. So this one is very uncomfortable, but it keeps you in a good position where the thumb goes under first, and then we grab under the thumb like so, or over the thumb like so. So what that does is that puts a ton of pressure on my thumb joint, and I'm pushing my pinky, or my opposite fingers into my thumb as hard as I can to try to create like a good seal there, instead of my thumb being the seal, because I can just open up my thumb. But if I'm going like that, then I have two things that have to open up before the thumb lets out, okay? So, or you can just use straps. Straps is a great way of doing it. I highly recommend straps. I love them. I use them all the time. So then the belt. what does the belt do? So the belt essentially provides, well, I'll say too, what is it not? It is not a tool that is used to protect you in any way. I think that's like a big thing that kind of gets pushed is like use a belt or the belt will save you in this, and it's just not going to do that. What it really does do is instead of having just all of these things to kind of push against and do, we have a third layer that surrounds us so we can push forward, which is also going to push me backwards. So it creates even more pressure in basically in my abdomen that I just can't achieve without having something kind of cinched around me. Belts are kind of like on a user to user basis. Some people really enjoy them, some people don't care. I would say I kind of go in and out of training with and without one. I kind of like it in some ways, but I kind of just don't really bother with it sometimes. It just depends. Belts are going to be a lot more individual. Kind of some people feel comfortable if it's up here, some like down here. So belts are just to create as much pressure as we can in here, even more so. What's up, Tip?
You just kind of answered my question, because I was wondering if I haven't used it before and I'm using it, how tight should I be it the first time? Or is it just kind of, you just like you said, more pressure?
Yeah, so how tight should it be? So you don't want it to be like so tight that you're like, you know, when you're walking around, you can barely breathe or anything. So you want to have like some space in there. Not necessarily like the jeans test, you know what I mean? Like you shouldn't be able to fit like, be like, all right, these jeans are feeling good because I can fit like my whole hand in there.
That's not how
So, well, either way, you should be able to fit much.
Maybe that's boys, but girls do that with jeans.
But either way, there shouldn't be too much space. You know, it should be tight enough that you can feel it, but not like so tight that you struggle to breathe. That can kind of happen. Or it can just be so tight to where like things start to push out in places that we don't necessarily like it. So like you can get pinched by the belt down here, especially when you're down in this position. Or sometimes people's ribs can get all bruised up if it's really, really tight. So I would say just something that feels relatively comfortable, but like there should be a level of support that you kind of feel when you have it on, that it kind of keeps you just a little bit more like, okay, I feel like something's in here that's causing me to have like a little bit more of a posture change. Perfect.
Hex bar.
Hex bar versus straight bar.
Yes. Maybe
Okay.
let's go to hex bar. So is it the same thing when you do a hex bar as opposed to a straight bar?
All right, so why is the hex bar so much easier, right? Like, why does it feel better when we do a hex bar? So that's basically because of the fact that when a lot of us are deadlifting, sometimes if the bar does not stay, it's harder to keep a straight bar centered because it's traveling around at the time, whereas the hex bar, if you can imagine, it would almost be like lifting like this. You know what I mean? But I can't do that with a straighter bar, so it's harder for me to stay in the right area because this bar is less likely to stay up on me and it's more likely to kind of come forward. I see a lot of people start a deadlift from this position right here, where their shins are like about half a foot, 6 inches away from their lifting, and it's over the toes. So what that happens is it puts a lot of pressure on my toes, puts a lot of strain on my back and my hips because I'm so far from the point of my body that's working. So what a hex bar does is it puts you right in the center of that whole thing. And on top of that, the handles are a little bit higher up, so you don't have to get as low of a position. So it just lessens the range. But generally speaking, the easiest part is the bar centers itself for you. Because as soon as you pull it up, that bar just kind of goes where it needs to, and there's a bunch of space kind of surrounding you, so it stays nice and balanced the whole time. But I like to say they're both a deadlift, you know what I mean? I don't discount the hex bar in any way at all. If you get really strong in a hex bar deadlift, you're still a really strong deadlifter, so it doesn't really make much of a difference. And for some people, the hex bar is the only answer. So like, there's like a caveat to like the whole back pain thing is if you have an existing condition, like you've gotten into an accident or something, and there's just certain things that we just won't be able to do because our body just doesn't tolerate that level of like force, then a hex bar might help you out because it puts you in a friendlier position. There is a little bit less things to worry about, and in general you can use a lot more leg drive because you don't have to have so much out of like your hips and in this starting position to just get the bar off the floor. Sweet. Any other questions, Dana?
Yeah, question about stance. And
Stance.
This might be a bridge to the sumo deadlift, I don't know. But some of us learned, like on a previous seminar, that we are a better squatter with a narrow or wide stance. So with the stance that you showed, for example, myself, like I take a wide squat or a wide stance when I squat. So that's maybe a little bit more, not uncomfortable, but harder, because I can't, it's natural for me to just go wider and get lower. Is there room to change the stance for that, or is that where the sumo comes in, where you just completely switch?
So, it's almost kind of like this. To answer, yes, you can change up. I would suggest lifting in the position that you feel the strongest in and you feel the best in general. Because there's no rule that says like, okay, you have to do deadlift this way or you have to do this way. These are just variations of things. It's almost like if you're on a bench press, the difference between having a standard grip or like a close grip. It's gonna slightly change the feeling of the movement, but like the overarching theme of it being a bench press kind of stays the same. You're just gonna find positions that you're a little bit more better suited, I guess, and this is where everybody's individual kind of anatomy plays into the role here. So when we're doing a sumo, there's a generally like accepted position, I'll say, but then there's like extremes to this, just like anything else. So, if you're standing right here, this could be a very narrow, or you could even have like a narrow sumo that's right here. That keeps your grip still pretty close, that keeps your knees still pretty close. But in general, like my knees are still in contact with my elbows. I'm just standing with my hands inside instead of outside. Or you can exaggerate. A lot of people like to exaggerate it. Really pull out and really turn out their hips more, so then they can push their legs even harder in that position. But I would say it's just a preference thing. There's no like necessary stance or position. If you feel sumo and you're comfortable with sumo, I would say definitely feel sumo. Sweet. What's up?
No, I was,
Take the slack out of the system. When I was training back when you start and you're pulling up, you take all the slack out, so you're really tight with your arms, and then you pull.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, so that's what I was referring to, like with the heavy in the hands. So like you want to basically like that little initial like kind of clank that you're in the bar as the barbell is kind of like catching all the weight that it's about to pick up. And this becomes more and more noticeable as the bar gets heavier because you can kind of start to pull the bar before anything comes off the floor at all. You'll notice, especially with these bars, when you guys have like a couple plates on each side, you start to pull, the bar starts to flex quite a bit. To the point where like you can actually like start to pull and things won't even move yet, but you'll feel the bar start to rise up with you. So you want to be as tight as you can. You want to pull all that slack out of the bar. I almost think about trying to row the bar with my body before I even lift it off the floor. So then I can come up. Because that slack is going to kind of make you pull twice. If you just kind of get down and you yank it, like it's going to pull off the floor and then it's going to slack down and you're going to get like this little like rebound effect that happens that could potentially pull you back down again, and then it's just uncomfortable. So does that answer?
It does, and then you touched on it, but the height of your butt off the ground, like you showed where you're squatted down, it's too low.
Yeah.
Like, what's your advice on how to position your butt off the ground?
So most of us will kind of find this naturally when we bring our shins to the bar. So when we stand up to it, your shins should only start maybe like an inch or two away, give or take. But generally speaking, if I look at the side of my foot, the bar should go right over the middle of my foot. And then I lean down, I grab it. So this is not necessarily the correct starting position, but then as soon as I bring my shins, my hips will set a little bit down so that I get into the good position. And that's all I really need to do. And then if you notice that, so if I were to start down here, and I start to pull this thing up, my hips are gonna shoot up first every single time to where they want to be. And sometimes I see that where people start to lift, and they really bring their hips down, and their hips shoot back up, and they go down, and all that happens. But wherever your hips kind of want to start to lift is what I would recommend as the starting height. So it's basically, as soon as you kind of come down, if you feel like that's a good position and you don't feel like your hips kind of shoot up off the floor first, then you're good to go. Tony Joe. What's up?
So my question is, like, when you're doing multiple reps, so go back down and not get that. Like, how do you not let the weight drag you back down?
So with the lowering,
It's not really legs at that point, right? Lowering back down.
right. So with the lowering, it's like a controlled lower. It doesn't have to be, and I would say the more like proficiency you build in the lift itself, the more comfortable that lowering part feels. So just like the more reps you get under your belt, the faster people tend to lower it, especially as the weight starts to get heavier. Because you get that initial kind of like, the initial pull up, and then you just kind of want to get back to the floor. You know, but you definitely want to get that nice proud stance at the top and be like, all right, I definitely lifted this looks good. And then when you're lowering it, you want to just kind of come down and easily set it back down to where it was. And as long as you kind of keep some tension in there, you could just keep going and you can start doing some touch and go reps. And as long as that bar is not moving too far from your body, you should be good. But unless the goal is to lower it really, really slow, if I say, all right, we're doing a tempo, and I want you to count to 4 on the way down, there's no real reason to lower it super slow. I would just say kind of control it back to the floor as much as you can. And sometimes I like to train people to reset at the bottom so they get the feeling for like kind of loosening up a little bit, getting tight again a lot. So then what that would look like is we get our position, get that tight position, stand up, down, and then just kind of relax for a second. Boom. But we keep that bar nice and close the whole time. And I just kind of let go of the slack in my back for a second, and then I step back into it.
When we're doing the deadlift for max weight, I get that. But one thing that I'm struggling with a little bit as I'm getting more into this is like where I should be at in my weights for like if we have to do 10 reps of those, right? Like it's not always a rush, but you get to it and you kind of feel what I need to be at. And if, like, let's say we're doing 10 reps of that, and it's down and back up. You know, should you be like every time coming up doing a Peter, like, but what's the right weight for that, right? Like, is it
300?
Right.
I only max it. I don't max it that. But just in general, like, should you be going through those and everyone feel like it's a struggle, or like, should you be looking for a specific burn on that? Because I found that I'm really bad at it. AJ's usually with me with a calculator, and we're like trying to figure out what I'm at, and then I'm like, okay, let's go, and then we fluctuate. But this Wednesday it might be, I feel really good doing it, and then the next Wednesday I might be like struggling each one, and I'm just trying to find that balance of like where I should be. Like,
That's a great question.
Like, let's just say I max at 220, right? Should I be lifting like should I be like 70% of that? 80% of that? You know, like when you're
That's what we
doing.
said, yeah.
That's what we do, it depends on the reps, I'd imagine, too.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's.
We sent out a thing one time about that, like if it's so many reps to like this percent.
And I will say, like, one of my favorite things to say is you don't have to run a marathon to train for a marathon. And what I mean by that is, like, there's a time and place for maxing out, and there's a time and place for just doing rep work. And sometimes it doesn't always have to be I'm going as hard as I possibly can. In terms of, like, if my goal is to increase my strength over time, it should be a little bit more of like an easy way up necessarily, and like maybe like 1 or 2 sets in that are going to be like super hard. But generally speaking, if I said, all right, we're gonna do sets of 10 today, my idea is like we're primarily focusing on quality of reps and technique, and not necessarily pulling maximal weight. Because if I wanted you to pull maximal weight, I would have said, all right, we're doing 1 to 3, and then we're doing something very heavy, in which my focus of that would be I'm trying to lift as much weight as possible for 1 rep, 2 reps, or 3 reps. So in terms of like percentage based, how to figure that out, generally speaking, I mean, if you're going 10 reps of 80%, that should feel very hard. That's like a good amount of weight to be pulling for 10 reps. If you're doing like 70%, that would be probably moderate to pretty hard. But I would say generally, if I was to like take a guess, 10 reps could be somewhere between like 55 and 60% of whatever your max is, and then that's like a good weight to work with. But also, you know, we're not like these perfect beings that just like show up and I'm like, I know I can lift 200% today. So, you know, there is like a little bit of kind of auto regulation that comes with that of just like if I come into the gym and I'm like, dude, this is feeling heavy today and this is only 60%. Well, then I should probably take maybe a little step back and just kind of realize that maybe today's not the day that I'm going to push as hard as I can for a heavy set of 2.
Until AJ.
I don't know what you're talking about. Somebody else should be taking the day off for no reason. I think that's why we give you guys a range sometimes too. So like sometimes you'll see like 8 to 12 reps. So like if you see that range, that 8 reps, like if we're staying on that lower end of that range, that 8 reps should feel like really heavy. If we can get to 12 and we feel like we can do more, that's when we should usually go up.
Yeah.
But like if that 8, getting to that 8 feels like a struggle, it might not be, or it might be too heavy. So like you want to be somewhere in that range. And that's just, you know, you guys being able to push yourselves as well and like knowing, all right, I can do more than these 12 reps, I should probably go up.
Yeah, and like another thing is like, you know, something that we like to say is like, especially when we're working with people, is like the reps are just a suggestion. They're not like, okay, you can't do this, because sometimes I'll walk over and people are like, that's my last one. I'm like, oh, okay. Was it like, it looks like you could have done 10 more, you know what I mean? So that's where it's just like, you know, if you're looking really good and I'm gonna push you and you're looking really good, like, but I mean, like, it's a little bit harder. Like, if someone's struggling to the max to pull a bar, I'm probably not gonna go over there and be like, I need 3 more out of this. Like, you look like you're barely moving that way. Give me 3 more, and you're just like, shoot off the floor. You know, maybe like 1 more. And so like, I'm like, let's go 1 more. 2 good ones. But you know, that's just a degree that comes with just like, I don't know, sometimes.
No, it's good to know.
You know, you're looking
and
really
I think
good.
the more you do it too, like I'm already starting to know what my limits are a little bit with weights, just starting to do. Because we do a lot of different, like in 4 weeks, I've barely repeated specific workouts, right? So like that next one might not come around for another 6 weeks. So I'm just starting to see like repetition on certain moves. So it's hard, you know, so now I'm starting to gauge where I was at previously on that.
Yeah, I mean, like, generally, especially for this portion of the challenge, like, we're going to be deadlifting every Monday. We probably do a lot of deadlifts. I think people can agree with that. We hit deadlift a lot.
And that's why, like, we put the workout in the app as well. And like, if you guys track the weights on there, every time that you come in, you can pull it up and see what you did last time. Like,
I didn't know you could do that.
oh yeah.
Yeah, and that's pretty sick too, because then you can look at it like, last time for 10 I hit this, and then you just go
Yeah.
Maybe it's been a while.
Sure. Yeah.
Just start doing that.
So, and that's just, you know, once again, that's like a person-to-person thing, in terms of like what some people might feel more comfortable with and some people don't. Generally speaking, I don't recommend deadlifting, like looking out towards the room. Only because if we're truly trying to keep our like back straight and everything, like our spine kind of comes all the way up to here, right? So if I'm like in this position, I'm trying to create a very neutral spine, like I'm kind of like defeating that purpose by like flexing my neck back, and I'm creating a giant curve through my like kind of cervical spine, or like the highest part. So I like to say keep your chin down and keep your eyes on something relatively like a couple feet in front of you. The reasoning for that is because this is such a kind of a balance heavy exercise. I say the same thing for squatting, just because if I'm looking down at the floor there, then when I'm pulling up, I have a good reference point to feel any kind of deviations and balance. And also, I personally just feel it a little more comfortable in my neck to deadlift with my chin down as opposed to chin up. You know, kind of stretching all these muscles instead of like shortening them all up as they're about to deal with some heavy load. So yeah. And then also leg press off the floor, sometimes that helps people out. If you think about just pushing your legs as hard as you can off the floor. So, yeah. Any more questions? Curtis?
Like if your grip isn't the best, wearing gloves kind of assist with that?
To be honest, I'm not sure if wearing gloves will or will not. I think on a mental level, it might help you out, and feeling level, like it might not pull on your hands as much. But it's not going to like strengthen like your thumb joint or anything to a point where I'm just like, okay, now my grip is much stronger. Really the only tools we could use for that is like just some straps. Get some straps, put them in the bar. Chalk helps too. I mean, chalk just creates more friction in there, so that's always good.
Yeah, I was gonna say the gloves for sweat for sure.
Yeah, you get
Hands,
sweaty
sweat,
palms, like
and
that's
your-
tough. Yeah. So chalk and gloves could help with sweat, just building more friction. It's just messy. It can be, yeah. Especially powder chalk. You can be clapping. Sweet. Any other questions?
Why do people not wear shoes?
Why do people not wear shoes? I don't know. I've done deadlifts barefoot. I've done deadlifts with shoes. I used to test out different shoes to see what felt good. I used to squat with shoes, and now I squat with no shoes. Generally speaking, what?
I was gonna say, so I wear like Brooks, like running shoes, so they're not lifting shoes, they're not like flat, so that's why I wear socks, so I'm more flat to the ground and I feel like I have a better grip.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the shoes, they cushion you and take the slack out.
What's that?
Like the running shoes, the problem that I've heard is they're slack in here. So when you're pushing, it's compressing and you don't.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a degree to that, you know?
Then sometimes I like them because they're real flat, and then also the oval that are real flat.
Yeah, I mean, I've deadlifted in all kinds of shoes, that's for sure. But I will say, one of the benefits of the feet just on the floor is you're just closer to the ground. Because if you could imagine, if I'm deadlifting in a platform shoe, and say I'm standing on something that's much higher, right? So I take these guys out, and let's raise my feet up. So now, basically what's gonna happen is because it's up higher on my shins, when I'm lifting this, it's gonna have to travel even further all the way up because I'm essentially raising my starting position. Whereas if I'm directly on the floor, even with a bare foot, I'm gonna get lower. And that's kind of why some people like the sumo, because this is another way of kind of lowering myself to the floor so I don't have to pull the bar as high. But I mean, generally, if you like the deadlift with no shoes, go for it. That's another thing that I would recommend, just kind of like training regularly though, and not just deciding to change it on a whim one day. You know, and stick to whatever you feel good with for a good while. Sweet. Who wants to practice some?
How much can you deadlift?
How much can I deadlift? Last class that we had, I just did 425. So
AJ, what's yours?
AJ did 565.
Max.
565.
But we got more. Let's go.
600 in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Watch what happens. So
Sounds like 5 people.
basically it. So, but yeah. Who wants to practice this thing?
Yes.
Emily?
Yeah, sure.
Lisa! Let's go. We got 2 bars, guys. Let's come on up. Let's get a couple people lifting. See what we can change. Yeah, for you. Alright, so step on up, nice and close. And then reach down. Bring the shins to the bar. Create some tightness. Nice. Your eyes down. Bar right. Physically drag it up. There you go. Good. Alright, Lisa, stay there.
Come on, Mark.
And then I would say reset the bottom. Take some time at the bottom. Feel that tension. Feel the tension I create. Yeah, there you go. You can just like pull your back up first. There you go. There's almost like a little lift through the back that's a preamble to like the actual.
Yeah, that does feel different with the
Nice.
arms.
Curtis, come on. Dana, let's go. We want more bars, guys? We got plenty. Steph? Let's go. Don't move it to you. Step up to the bar.
So your dominant hand is
Dominant hand over
Yeah. For me, with this is
Yeah, that's it. Nice. And keep it on all the way down. Drag it up. And then drag back down.
this way.
That's it. Good.
You should.
Perfect.
Or take your shoes off and try to put some shoes.
Nice stuff.
So you don't have to split, doesn't matter?
I-
Because one arm stronger than the other.
No.
I was
No, I wasn't worried about that. Yeah, you're gonna walk around with one giant arm and then
Right.
you withers later.
So I am right-handed,
Three.
but I always.
Let's do it, Jess.
Let's
see it.
Right now.
Tim, come on up.
Arm wrestling right now. Yeah. I'll hold my leg on my right arm. With my left dependent on it, we're taking time. Yeah.
There you go. So yeah, middle of the foot, shins to the bar, pull it a little bit with the arms, get tight, and then stand. Oh yeah, nice. Yeah, I don't want to hear no sound when you initially pull that bar. That's good.
Yes, then there's, but you know what, I can say that it actually it's gonna help me like, that's so I've been extra like, or sorry, was it? But I think it's like, there's always trouble. This side, that one side, I get it bigger than this side. You know? Because I think it definitely is my strongest side. Oh yeah, it's easy, yeah. Especially when we're doing the one that's like.
So that bar is literally gonna stay as close as
Oh yeah. Yeah.
nice and good. Christy! No, Christy, you got it bigger. It doesn't have to be super slow. It's kind of free. All right. Sylvia, Ariel, Will.
I'm not a paid member yet.
Hey, man, but you're here. You can live. Anybody else on right? So you know? History of the name of the deadlift? Great question. So let me actually tell you this. So, the history of the name of the deadlift. So where did the deadlift come from? Okay. So it's from way back in the medieval days, right? When people would like leave their dead out. No, yeah, no, this is legit. This is real. They would leave out dead bodies like during the plague, and like that's how people would like lift the bodies up off the ground and throw them into the. So it's just literally called deadlift. Like they would deadlift people. It's pretty true. That's not the first one, believe it or not. I've been, you know, I've been trained long enough. People ask me these questions. I'm like, oh, let me see. Gotta look it up.
Oh yeah. No, she owns.
Box jumps is actually what we're going over next.
Oh, it is.
Brandy? Not feeling it. It's on
Yeah, I think we did that one challenge. One crazy.
Nice. Good job, guys. Well done. Yeah, you gotta save it for Monday because we're hitting down this again. All right, y'all. So let's quickly move on to pull-ups here. Once
My
again.
neck hurts from that one day.
Yeah, okay. So pull-ups are very hard, right? So pull-ups, why do we even like them? I love them because of how challenging they are. All right, so pull-up is a great, really upper back, shoulder blade, bicep, grip. It works a bunch of things. And then my favorite thing about it is because I think that if people have a pull-up as a goal, it's just one of my favorite goals to hear people say because there's a lot of good things that happen in that road of like achieving a full-on bodyweight push-up, or pull-up rather. Pull-up, push-up too, you know, we like them all. But, so, I got my same 5 points here for the pull-up, guys. So the first one would be grip. So how do we find our preferred grip? Generally speaking, you can kind of bring your arms to a 90-degree angle like so, and then just reach straight up. And then wherever that leaves you is exactly where you want to be. It's going to be maybe slightly outside of shoulder width for most of us. So that's going to be our starting position. Then from there, once I'm hanging, you can choose to either let your thumb free if you like it. Some people like to feel it in their back more, or you can wrap that thumb around for a little bit of a stronger grip. It's up to you. All right, but I kind of prefer my thumbs out. From there, I'm straightening my legs. So I'm squeezing actively at my knees, and I'm gonna pull my feet slightly in front of me to get my core very, very tight. All right, so straighten the legs, pull the feet in front of me. From there, I gotta set my shoulder blades. So I'm gonna pull my shoulder blade down a little bit. So there's a little bit of elevation that happens slightly. And then lastly, I'm gonna try to get the bar to my chest, guys. All right, so what we want to do is I like to think about not necessarily pulling myself up, but pulling the bar down to me. All right, so I'm in my position, feet forward, set my shoulder blades, pull to that bar, and I act like there's a magnet. Boom, bring my chest up, pull my shoulder blades back, and then I control my lower. All right, feet forward, nice and easy now. All right. As much core as you can get. All right, the more muscles we can use. Sometimes people do like a pull down and they notice that even at a body weight, where pull downs can feel pretty heavy, but that's because it doesn't use our core much at all. But if we do our pull ups, you get your core involved, kind of squeeze the glutes a little bit, keep everything down here nice and tight. It's a lot easier. If anybody's ever done cheerleading before,
Yeah.
yeah, AJ for sure, right? It's a lot easier to pick someone up when they're kind of like a little bit tight than when they're just like, you know, trying to pick up pudding with sticks, you know what I mean? So, like, the harder and tighter you get throughout your whole body and the more tension you create, just the more things are gonna get you pulling up, all right? So, kind of progressions that we can get, all right? And these are things that, if some of you have a pull-up bar at home or outside of the gym, different ways that we can do it. I recommend just hanging from the bar pretty often. If you can manage to hang from the bar alone for like a good 20, 30 seconds, that's gonna do a lot for your grip for sure. And it's just gonna burn your forearms like crazy, all right? Looking at you, Andrew, hang from that bar, all right? But, general progressions, guys, of course we have like this kind of pull up right here. And we wanna work on getting these for like high sets that you could do from home, 20, or even on against like a wall or something. You get like a pillar, you can literally just lay back and kind of pull yourself up to something in front of you, like a post. And then just get your feet as close as you can, all right? Then, we have like these lower positions, right? We've all gone over these. If we can get these for a very high amount of reps, then we want to start to move our feet off the floor as much as possible. So the higher our feet go, to where we get a little bit more suspended on here, makes it a lot harder, okay? So if I'm up on a position like this, and I have a box or this shelf in front of me, like so, and I can get low, and I start to pull myself up, this is gonna make me very, very strong as I go into my pull-ups, all right? So, when we're actually hanging from the bar, a few variations that we can do is basically just kind of something where we have anything that can just kind of get us up there. So if I have something that can kind of boost me up a little bit, give myself a little boost, pause at the top and try to hold it as long as I can. Woo! Woo! All right? And then control my lowering. But the more you're able to control your lowering on the pull-ups, the more you'll just get stronger. The kind of the explosive part, as hard as it does seem, it's really hard at the top. So if you can really get a good squeeze at the top and then slowly kind of control your way back through that motion, I would maybe expect that to make you a little bit stronger than just like pulling up, all right? So I would say one of the most common mistakes people make with the pull-up is they kind of pull away from the bar sometimes, especially when there's like assistance, where they kind of end up like out here, kind of doing this position, right? So we're getting there, it's closer, but it's a little bit more of a swing back instead of like imagining trying to, like there's a rope, like pulling my chest up to that bar, or like I'm trying to bend that bar across my chest. Those are just some things I like to think about when I'm doing the pull-ups.
So think about it coming here, not here.
Yeah, because I mean,
Right, your collarbone.
Yeah, if you can get, I mean, like that's the thing though. It's like,
Like
you know,
just
I would.
think about it.
We're
Yeah.
counting just the chin over, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like, you want to like that's really is like so you want to get kind of as high as you can. I would say just we always want to in most exercises get as much range of motion as we possibly can. Like if I can bring my arms all the way down and then bring that bar all the way to my lower chest, like that's a huge pull up and I'm gonna get much stronger than if I'm just down here doing these or if I'm just up here kind of doing this because I want to maximize that range of motion, right? So there's no like, I would say like a required full pull up is at least chin to the bar for sure. But then like the variance of how low you can go after that just increases the difficulty to then you start getting people over the bar. Getting on top of it, and that's like, you know, an even harder issue there. So.
So 1 foot, 2 foot, like what's the proper position to do with the band?
So, you know, 1 foot is gonna get you there for sure. The band's not gonna stretch more from having like 2 feet in it. But generally speaking, when I set myself up in a band, I bring it down and I just put 1 foot on it. I like it to be right under the middle of my foot so it doesn't flip out anywhere. And then I get my position and I like to wrap my feet. All right, so what that does is it kind of helps me to point my toes a little bit more and it keeps the band in place so I can pull this thing up and down and I'm not like rocking around as much. Because I don't want that band to be kind of like pulling me forward or swinging around or anything like that. I just like to wrap it, get really tight, and then start my pulls.
Can you show us how to get out of that solo? Because I struggle with that. I was
So, the way that I like to get out of it, I take a step up onto here, and I just bring my feet up until it comes up like that, all right? But also, that's why we're here, right? So, if I can, I'm going to help you get out of it and help you get into it.
I know how.
But yeah, band assisted pull-ups are probably one of the best ways. Especially, I like try to recommend as much people try the band assisted pull-up. Although it is a little bit scary. Of course, you have to climb on the rack and all that stuff. But like, we are here to help you guys out. And the more you can recreate exactly what you're trying to do, the more proficiency you're gonna build in that thing, right? So it's like we want to practice for the test we're gonna take. You know, I'm not gonna study history for a math exam. So here, I want to try to get as much of a real pull-up as I possibly can so I can work closer and closer to a regular pull-up. But then any amount of stuff that you could do at home in terms of like, if you have something that you can hang off of, if you have something that you can like, you know, pull yourself in towards and just kind of work the mechanics per se, that'll carry in more towards your regular pull-up here. All right? Uh-oh. Kipping?
Kipping, yeah.
You can't kip here or you're gonna die.
So a kipping pull-up would be referred to, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I've never actually really performed one, but it's more of like there's like a swing that happens with it. So you'll see it's like if you ever seen CrossFitters do their pull-ups and they do them very rhythmically, and there's kind of like this, like
flailing.
Yeah, there's kind of like this this very round position that keeps coming and happening.
Chest out, your hands go back, your feet go back to you.
So
Can you wrap them out, Em? Can you kip?
I can't do it to a pull-up, I can do the kipping.
Oh, nice.
So I'd argue they're two completely different skills. And the only reason I say that is because I've never practiced kipping pull-ups, so I don't even know how to do them. Whereas this is the only pull-up variety I can do, and I'm okay. You know, like I can get a few, but I would just say it's just another way of doing it. But it's almost like two different exercises in terms of like your goal. Like if you are a CrossFit athlete and your goal is to compete in that, then I would say, okay, we should definitely do kipping pull-ups as often as you can. But if you're just like, I want to be able to build a stronger back, or I want to maximize my growth in my back or my arms, then I would say we should stick to a regular pull-up. So that would be it. It's more of just like a goal-dependent thing. A little controversial, depending on who you ask.
Talk to me about hand position. So I saw a lot of people going really close, and then you talked about going wider. Like what muscles are used when you go wider compared to close?
All right, so I would say, generally speaking, wide is going to be very hard for a lot of people. So the further our hands kind of get from our back, the less this back is going to be able to work to its advantage, all right? So this kind of comes into our elbow. So the closer our elbow is to this, the more directly that line of pull is going to be. Whereas out here, I have kind of like a different line of pull. So that's why a lot of people find chin-ups to be very easy or easier than a pull-up, because a chin-up lines up directly with my back muscles. So when I'm pulling down, my back is able to work extremely well, and I'm getting a lot more biceps. Whereas if I turn that around, I have a little bit of kind of rotation that's happening in my shoulder there, and it's getting me a little bit further out. So as I'm pulling down, I feel it in my back, but also my shoulders are gonna have to do a little bit more work, and my upper back specifically is gonna have to do quite a bit more work. But that's why it helps to kind of help with that like shoulder blade down. If I'm pulling from here, and I'm just kind of hanging out in this very stretched position, no matter how much my grip is, it's gonna be really hard to initiate that pull without first setting my shoulder blades. And then you can go really wide grip, or you can do a slightly closer grip. But I would say in general, something around just slightly outside of shoulders is gonna feel the best for people. On a pull-up, chin-up is gonna be fairly close. And then wide grip pull-up if you wanna challenge yourself.
When you just started your pull, it looked like, and because I've heard this, you're basically angling yourself at the bar a little bit, and you're sticking your chest out, so it's not a straight movement, it's more of a angled movement.
Right, so basically, I mean, so my chest is gonna move up for sure, but my arms should still pull pretty straight down. It's kind of just changing the position of my body to match my straight up and down. Because in this situation, right, I mean, I'm just fighting gravity, which is just straight up and down all the time. So it's like, I can't necessarily pull myself at any angle other than directly up to kind of get to the bar, no matter what. It's just positioning my chest to kind of advantage myself to get up there a little bit easier, if that makes any sense.
I feel like that also makes your head shake.
Yeah, exactly. Because like it's tough to kind of, if I just have my head under the bar and I just like, you know, give myself a concussion. So I'm just pulling up so fast. Sweet. Anybody want to practice some pull-ups then?
Let's see some kipping. Tony Joe.
Man, let's do it. You guys gonna try one? Let's do it. So start with the feet on there so you can like grab everything really well. Get a good tight grip.
It's like up my shoulder. And with this grab, this is like a liner band, right?
Let's go, Ariel. Come on.
Yeah. Nice.
Big chest, Brad. Big chest, big chest.
Nice.
The green band is going to be
Nice. It's just a little more assistance.
Okay. And usually the hardest part is getting into the stupid band.
Yeah.
This, like, fix this.
So go ahead and come up one more. And go and put your hand on the bar.
You did.
Over there. And then we'll cross it over.
Alright.
It's so hard to do that.
Yeah. Big chest.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of
Nice.
And even reset, like, you don't have to control your down and
Here.
stuff. So a lot of people, once you get up here, you're like so slow. Yeah.
Nice. like, yeah, so big chest. See how that feels.
Nice.
Oh, goodness.
How is that compared?
Let me put this.
I figured much.
Go ahead and step up to this. Yep.
You have to like control that a little bit too. If you said go this far.
You're good.
Good,
no, you're good.
as soon as you break that down.
How was that compared? Like leaning back. How did that feel?
Come on, bro.
Yeah, of course.
It's a whole lot of things. Yeah. And then that laser.
There we go, dude.
Nice. Great.
Get the chest up there. Have you done nothing resistance band? That was your first time doing it with no resistance band? First time.
I'm gonna try the red one, because I haven't done the red. That's what I did last time.
Yeah.
Can you try the
Yeah, but this one's that one is. Yeah, if you've done this, you haven't even stayed there. That's harder.
No, you did that. You gotta do the green.
Yeah, it progresses. So if you're doing green, you got to stay with it right there. Yeah, because that's harder. That's harder. Beautiful, Seth. Nice. 8. I got it. Nice.
I love the sound effects.
Squeeze your up there. Squeeze your butt. Okay.
Sorry.
Told you we're here for you. So go ahead. I would step up first.
Yeah, there you go. And then we'll put the
He's like,
And then both of them are gonna
and then
help.
you wrap. I like to wrap so it doesn't go anywhere for sure.
The other guy. Yeah, point those toes.
Legs.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Get it. Squeeze those abs. Squeeze those abs.
Nice, dude.
There.
Let's go, dude. Nicely done, man.
So, because I did, that's the easier one.
Yes.
Yeah, you could say that, I guess.
Sylvia's gonna do red.
That's what I'm talking about.
So Sylvia has a bar at
I can't even.
I would.
You're gonna surprise yourself. Okay,
I
hop
would
up
do
there.
Probably both, honestly.
that and then just working on the negative. So like if you have that bar at home,
And then you're gonna put
I
that other
would
one right on top
work
of
on like
it.
starting up and then just slowly lower it down.
Point
like
those
you saw.
toes.
No, big pull, big pull, big
You
pull.
can't pull yourself up or come up and then just work
Get
on
it, get it, get it.
that negative.
Get it. Up, 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 up. Yeah.
And then slowly put it down. Like, I would put, if you're
Good
already
girl,
up,
well, you
you're
up here now,
already,
so
like,
you're not allowed to do
heading is,
TRX
like,
anymore.
The first step, but like I think you're probably a little bit past that, so I would try to hang
Yes,
at the top
ma'am. Good
and
job.
make that your hang, and then slowly lower yourself down. Cause like I don't know, when I learned how to do a pull up, I just had a bar, and every time I walked past it, I was like, I can't do it. So yeah, great job, guys. Any other closing questions? Beautiful.
How many pull-ups can you do?
How many pull-ups can I do? What did I just get? I don't know.
What did I just?
I think I did 18. No, I did get over 20. I got like 18.
AJ, how many can you do?
I think I did like 22 the other day, 23.
Do you do it fast?
Yeah.
He was pretty fast. They were fast. I mean, you were just going. I was like, you can't stop there. Get out there. So,
What, 3 years ago? I made it like my mission.
beautiful. Well, guys, thank you all so much for coming. I super appreciate all of you. Thank you so much. I hope that you guys can carry that information and, you know, bring it with you and apply it to your, well,
Definitely the
Monday.
medieval time one.
Definitely. Forever.
Fun fact.
Fun fact. Nobody else, yeah, really. Like, why is it called a deadlift? Well, because dead people. That's when you just say you want to see it, and then you just knock them down, and then pick them
You should come to my class. It's free. Like the first class is free. Yeah. So like and then every weekend, every month, that whole weekend is free. So it's yeah. But I go to one away from me.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fine. I don't really know where the blue stands up. I wonder if you break that though.
That's looser than you do.
It looks about the same. This one's nice. Yeah.
I'm just gonna break it.
Pretty good. They look good.
Not as crazy.
Well, there's a, I mean, I can't do one. It's 8 rings.
There's like, yeah, there's gotta be another one. Does that feel like, it feels like a little, like tiny bit. I think it's also just mental. That's what I'm saying. I feel like it's like, I try not to fail.